I was a former capo regime captain with the Colombo crime family, one of the five New York Cosa Nostra families. My dad was the underboss of that family, and I was part of that life. I kind of followed in his footsteps. Originally, that wasn't my intent, but my dad drew a 50-year prison sentence back in 1967. I was a pre-med student at Hofstra University in 1970 when my dad went to begin serving that time. And my life changed dramatically at that point. My dad felt it was better for me to be as part of that life to help him get out of prison. In a case that was really a bad case. My dad was framed in that case. So I was motivated to do that. Through a series of events, I became a made member myself, which is the term they use when you officially join that life, in 1975. And so all told, I was about 20 years in that life. And, I kind of made a name for myself, not always good in that life, because I became a major target of law enforcement. Actually had 17 or 18 arrests. I was indicted 7 times at 2 federal racketeering cases, one brought on by Rudy Giuliani. Ended up going to trial 5 times and was either acquitted or dismissed in every case, so I was never convicted. But then I met a young girl who's now my wife of 38 years, a young Christian woman that kind of had a tremendous impact on me, changed the thought process and direction of my life. And as a result of that, I ended up taking a plea. I had a 10-year prison sentence on a major racketeering case, another one that they indicted me on. I had a $15 million restitution, $5 million in forfeitures. I married Camille in July of 85, went off to prison in December of 85, ended up doing 8 years in prison total, walked away from that life amidst many challenges to try to get away from it. But and through a series of events that I believe were God ordained, I became a public speaker, sharing my testimony. I'm now a believer in Jesus Christ, and been doing that over the past 25 years, between speaking, writing books, and doing whatever I can as part of ministry. And then I still have that entrepreneurial spirit, so I'm in the wine business, pizza business. All I can say is I've been extremely blessed, to be alive and free and speaking to you right now.
Awesome. That's an incredible summary right there. So there's so much that we can go into. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Tell me about the story. Tell me about your family.
Very turbulent, Zuby, because my dad was major target of law enforcement, always under investigation, always being arrested. Law enforcement tactics very different back then than they are today. My dad was under constant surveillance by a number of law enforcement agencies, so they were around us all the time. And I grew up in an atmosphere of hating the police and hating law enforcement because I loved my dad. He was my hero. And we had a lot of trouble in the family. I had brothers and sisters younger than me. And my dad was, again, he was away. He was home. He was going on trial. He was home. And, my mother had a lot of emotional stress during that time. So it was very turbulent. In a way, it caused my younger brother and sister, I believe, as a result of my dad's involvement in that life, my sister became a drug addict. She was hooked on drugs and actually died an overdose of drugs at the age of 27. My younger brother, drug addict for over 25 years. My younger sister, 41 years old, died young, emotional stress. So, and I attribute that all to the childhood that we grew up in. And then my dad goes to prison and actually does 40 years on that 50. He was in and out a few times on parole, but kept going back. So it wasn't a normal childhood in any way. As far as myself, I went to school, I went to high school, got into college. Had to deal with all of this, but somehow I was able to navigate through that. And fortunately, it didn't have the impact on me, I believe, that it had on the rest of my family. So I don't know why. I don't know, but just very blessed in that regard. But it was rough. It was tough. My grandfather, who came over here from Italy, was a very well-respected guy in the neighborhood in Brooklyn. He knew a lot of guys, and so my father grew up around them. And my dad just saw this life as being attractive, and those guys in the life thought he had what it took to become a member of that life, so he went in that direction. My grandfather actually didn't want that for him, but my dad was, he made up his own mind. But my dad did get involved and then became a very prominent figure in that life.
It's interesting because this is one of those, there's the movies, there's the books, there's the TV shows, everyone hears about, you know, the mafia and these crime families and so on. It's sort of like a myth and a legend. It's one of those things that you know is real, but it's so far removed from most people's lives and experiences that it almost sounds like fiction, even though that you know it's fact. When you were a kid, how aware were you of what your dad was involved in and what was going on there?
You know, Zuby, the funny thing, my dad, when we had all of this law enforcement around us all the time, he would never bring what was going on in the outside world, in his world, into the house. He wouldn't even talk about it. In the house, we were a family. He didn't want to talk about it, even though it was all around us. So everything I knew about that life, I knew from what I witnessed, I knew from the media, I knew from other people telling me, never from my dad's lips. But it was so obvious, you know. I mean, I'll give you a story. I mean, I'm 10 years old. I'm playing ball in the street, and we lived on kind of an incline. So Frank throws a ball, goes over my head, rolls down into where two agents were sitting in the car that were surveilling my dad. And so one agent gets out of the car. He's a big guy, and he stops the ball with his foot. And I walk up to him. I said, "Sir, can I have my ball back?" And he had a suit jacket on. He pulls his jacket aside. He's got a gun. He pulls it out. He said, "This is for your old man one day." So, you know, 10 years old, that's kind of, wow, you know, kind of scary. So, I mean, I couldn't help but know what was going on, you know. And, but again, never from my dad. Yeah, would never talk about it. And it was funny, you know, when he was outside of people, media was there, whatever, he would walk past them like they didn't even exist. You know, get in the car and never even talk about it. It was amazing. But obviously, like I said, it was all around us.
What was that like as a child? I mean, going to school, going to college, all that. How aware were other people of who you were, who your father was? Were there children of other people who were in the mob in your school? I'm just trying to understand what those dynamics were.
Yeah, very aware. I mean, there were some kids, I had my issues with it. Some kids in the schoolyard, hey, you got an off your dad, you know, whatever would come out in the papers, and I'd fight, you know. And then there was other kids that were kind of attracted to it, you know, they were turned on by it. And then there were parents that maybe didn't want their kids hanging around with us. And then there were other families that they were, you know, they wanted to be around. And so you got a little bit of both, you know. But it didn't affect me in a bad way because I love my dad. And I found out during that time, you know, that love of my father, that ruled everything for me at that point. So I dealt with it, you know. He was supportive of me, and I was supportive of him.